Boom shakalaka.
Boom shakalaka. And I think, I'm gonna change up the intro a little bit.
Okay.
We're rolling on 1, 2. Here we go. Third camera rolling. We're good. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh.
Hell yeah. 5.
Awesome.
Little
5.
side angle there.
There we go. Welcome back to Brando G's #1 podcast, Over the Seas. We are back at it again. No.
That's us, man. Yeah, I gotta give it some sexy intro like, hey.
Yeah.
Welcome to Brando's podcast.
Yes.
Have you missed me? Probably not, because this is episode number 1. Alright, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get into it. I'm just going to skip the intro. I'll record that later.
Cool.
Let me introduce my good friend, Adrian, who's an accomplished skater, model. You run multiple businesses, but give me a little bit of a history about yourself. Just introduce yourself. Tell our audience a little bit about who you are and why you're creative.
Wow. You know, we were just talking about this off the cameras and how we're not very good at talking about ourselves unless prompted a direct question. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So generalized questions like that are hard to answer, but I'll try my best. I think, I was invited here today because you and I are creative buddies. Creative is definitely a generalized term.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a lot of different things. I think that you and I just have vibes, frequencies, whatever you want to call it, where we mesh. You know what I mean? And that's why I think I'm here today. And we share a lot of the same values and ideas and a lot of the out-of-the-box thinking. I'm a skater of 20 years. Goofy guy. I think I'm just certified.
More than goofy.
Certified goofy guy. And I'm here to just talk about my experiences.
Yeah, so part of this is going to be exploring where we've come from. So for me, a lot of where I've gained the most knowledge has been in my failures. So I had you, before we started rolling, write down a couple of successes, failures, dreams, hopes, and I want to talk a little bit about the journey of Adrian. Like, where have you come from, and what has pivoted you into the person you are today? And, I mean, feel free to say no to this question, but is there a moment that kind of changed the trajectory to, like, where you are right now that you can say was either a success or a failure that kind of defined who you are?
I could definitely retell, I guess, my entire life story, and anybody could pick out a single point and be like, that's where he turned. But I don't know, I've always felt like a pretty straight arrow. Like, I've always felt like I feel like I've definitely been the same person since I was a kid. Like, I've always just been goofy and just kind of, I don't know, I've always just been the goofy fun guy. I don't like doing what I don't like doing. And I really struggle a lot with doing stuff I don't want to do, which I know is it's a big controversial thing, especially with, for those that don't know, like, my parents are 50 years older than me. So they're in their 70s, and so, they're extremely open-minded, but they are, there's those generational gaps. So I find that, at some point in time, I've always been the kind of person that just really needs to stick with what I'm passionate with. You know what I mean? Or at the very least, what I find interesting. Because if not, I can't do it. My brain won't let me.
Well, we're super similar in that way.
Yeah.
I've never had a job that I didn't like.
Yeah.
There was always aspects of it that I enjoyed doing, and I was passionate about them. But the traditional path that my parents wanted me to take, like high school, college, graduate college, get a job, climb some sort of ladder and have some stability, was not for me. I mean, just so you know, like, I quit my first job and I became a professional rock climber. Like, making no money. Like, I didn't know what I was going to do. The industry was just starting out in America. So, yeah, I was really just kind of thrown into chaos immediately. And my parents were always stressed for me. And so I can totally agree and say that we're similar in a way that we can't do stuff that we don't want to do. And I think we're also privileged in that way.
Yeah. No mistaking it. You know, I can't tell if it was this take or 500 takes ago that I said. I'm kidding. That no, but previously I mentioned off camera that you know, luck is a big part of my story. That's a big thing, and luck, coincidence, whatever you want to believe in. But like, yeah, for me it's luck. I don't know where it came from, so I'm calling it luck. But yeah, we're caught the luck of having privilege, the luck of all that kind of stuff, and I'll go into it more. But I guess to start off of who I am, right? I'm 25. I was raised here in DC, the DC area, DMV, on the Virginia side now, and but yeah, I'm adopted, which is not really a big deal. It never has been a big deal for me. Like, all the kids are pretty much adopted, and most all the kids are adopted in my family. You know what I mean? So it's not really a big deal. Like, we're one big international house.
Well, you mentioned to me earlier that some of your friends that knew you for 10 years didn't
even know. Yeah.
Well, so tell me, how does it affect? Because you're saying it's not a big deal, and it definitely isn't.
Yeah.
But are there differences? Just like that.
Differences in what?
Yeah, like your relationships to people. Does it change your relationship once they know, or?
You know, right? You know, it's funny. Like, I think this last year, I've been trying to see, like, just going through life more consciously, and in relation to being adopted, and wondering if any of it does make a difference. But even then, even back when the 24 years that I didn't care about it, now trying to be more conscious about it, yeah, I still can't really find that it has a massive effect on anything. It really doesn't.
Well, from the movies that I've seen, like, some people have like a bone to pick. They like don't feel good enough, and like, they take on the world in this bigger picture way because
there's a lot of compensations.
They're constantly proving to the world that they
there's
matter.
A deep-rooted need to belong and to prove that you belong.
Do you feel that?
No, not really.
Good.
I feel like I got a lot of boring answers to all these super cool existential questions. You're like, yeah, do you feel that deep need to just, that soul-sucking need? I'm like, no, I don't.
No. Good. Yeah. I feel like that's a super healthy place to be. Because sometimes I feel the opposite way. Sometimes I'm not adopted. Like, my parents are still together and have a great relationship, and my relationship to them is good, but I sometimes feel this pressure on myself that I want to prove to the world. And I don't know if that's my artistic quality, like I want to leave my mark on the world, or if it was just watching movies growing up and the media that we have here in America, that like I can be this, you know, I guess in the capitalist ideology, I could make it and I could be this big presence,
this
that
grander thing.
People like look up to, and like you can rise to this sort of infamy that some history has shown us. Really like solidifies these people as markers in like history. Like,
have you ever felt like you were like born for something greater than yourself? Like, or to be great, just straight up? Not like,
I don't think so.
Not Alexander the Great, not like, you know.
No, I always felt like
worthless. But just like,
I felt like the classic analogy of like a cog in a wheel. Just like that there's this machine that's moving, and like I'm
you're just
somewhere in there, and maybe I'm an important part to some of the other parts, but like on the whole, I know that many people live and die, and doesn't change anything. So I feel like I almost empathize more with like the little guy than some epic.
Because I asked you that because it's kind of like, where do you think that motivation comes from? Where do you think that motivation comes from to feel the need to do art? Because to do art means to express, and to express means to release a part of you, a creation, something.
Yeah, when I think about that question, I think I just want to be seen. I feel like...
Because you're the little guy.
I've always been a little guy, and when I say that literally, like physiologically, I was the smallest kid in my class all the way through high school, so like I didn't really have a growth spurt, that put me into average height until much later than most people, and that came with a lot of getting picked on, and so I always felt outcast. And I was ostracized from society, and when you're in that position, you don't have a lot to say that people will hear. People just kind of overlook you, and so I feel like maybe a part of that is like deeply rooted in those like deep wounds, those old childhood trends of like, am I being seen? And although I am being seen, in my life now and have many friends and good experiences, I think there's an old part of me that wants to share what I have with a bigger audience and like also stand up for those other people, because I know it happens to others as well. So the idea being, how can I use my voice now to share with others to help people see that?
Is there a need? Do you feel a need to somehow grow your voice beyond the height of your physical body? I asked that because like you talked about growth spurts and all that stuff, and being short, right? And like now we have the whole short king and everything, right? And
Am I a short king?
I don't know, dude. I don't know.
I think you're a short king.
I think we're all... I'm not even gonna say it. I think we're all just short, and we're all short, and we're happy with ourselves. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
You mean like in the metaphorical sense?
Yeah.
Standpoint, like even 6'2" people.
Yeah.
Some of my best friends growing up were 6'4".
Yeah.
And like in high school, and it's like they opened up to me about how it was difficult being large.
Yeah.
And in such a like young place where you're like afraid of hurting people, afraid of scaring people.
Yeah.
You're always kind of walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's a perspective that I don't have, because in my mind it's all about like, you're seen as the next big basketball star, you're seen as these kind of larger than life characters, you have opportunities with women, like this kind of male-female sense, but none of that is really real.
Yeah.
It's just these expectations we put on people. And do you know about the experiment that they did with mice?
Yeah, I do.
The one I'm talking about, like where they put dumb mice and they put smart mice. Yeah. Well, tell the audience if you know it, right?
You got it.
Okay. It's been a while, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so for the people that don't know, this experiment was that a group of scientists were given each the exact same mice. They had no prior knowledge of whether or not these mice were smart or dumb. But what they did was they put a sign on each of the cages, one that said dumb mice, and their group of scientists only worked with the dumb mice, and one group of scientists only worked with the smart mice. And the smart mice outperformed the dumb mice every time.
Every time.
Every single time. And the implication is that the smart mice had no actual factors of being more intelligent, but that the expectations and the level of care that their scientists gave to them were vastly different. If you expect someone to be dumb or unintelligent or not worthy in some way, your expectations of them is low.
Yeah.
So,
which really makes that person the dumb one, right?
Yeah, whoa, I like that.
Right? Like, it's like, you're gonna walk into a room and you see a group of people sitting on the right and a group of people sitting on the left. You're gonna slap two labels on them and treat them as such. It's kind of the dumb thing to do. You know what I mean? But what was I gonna say? I was gonna say something. Oh, just to finish off on this tall, short thing, but like not so much actually the physical height, but you mentioned the underdog or the little guy being a screw in a bigger machine, right? There's a freedom to that. There's a massive freedom to that. And what really made me think about it is when you were talking about tall people, physically being taller than everybody puts this unwanted spotlight. Rock stars, they love the spotlight, right? They want the spotlight on them, right?
Mm-hmm.
These average height kids that spurt out of nowhere and become these like flagpoles amongst their friends, right? They get there's a pressure, there's all kinds of, people are physically looking at you first when they enter the room because you're the biggest thing in the room, right? So there's an unwanted, in that sense, you're a lot less free. Whereas, there's, what I mean by freedom of being the screw in the machine is like, it's kind of like moving in the shadows, you know what I mean? Like, you could say shorter people have like a harder time with like women and I don't know, there's all kinds of weird statistics out there that say like tall people get some sort of a privilege because of all this kinds of like, they're seen first, they're seen as a short male versus a tall male is seen as like a stronger, more masculine being, but you know what, it's like I think it comes down to, again, this isn't everything, but in every situation, but this is what I've experienced, is kind of like anybody who's not given something, they earn it. Of course, they're gonna come out of the shadows one day, and they're just gonna be a titan. They're just gonna be like a force to be reckoned with. You know what I mean? Like, where did this short kind of, I don't even know the political term for it, but it's like fat person. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, or like oversized person. Like, where did this shorter, more overweight comedic person come out of, right? This person came out of like Iowa or something, and they're the funniest comedian, and because of that, they worked on but during that time they worked on a craft. They got funnier, they got more charismatic, they know they're not the most handsome or beautiful, you know what I mean? So they do other things to, you could say compensate, but they do other things to better themselves around what they were given, you know what I mean? And so at the end you get a better result that way. And so it's really interesting, like, and I actually have always preferred, bringing it back full circle, I've always preferred being shorter. Like,
well, people value different things, right? Like,
if
you're tall, the expectation is that you're tall, but then they don't, nobody really expects that person to be, kind, charismatic, interesting, witty, intelligent. It's just like, okay, if that's your limiter for who you want to date, sure, like, tall is fine.
Exactly.
But those other factors you maybe put lower down on our pedestal, whereas if you're open to dating a shorter person, you probably aren't so worried about the physical side of their appearance. You're more interested in those other factors. So, I love what you said about moving in the shadows. Just the freedom that you have as a person to do all this. So I want to bring
nobody. Just to I wanted to finish it up because we've been talking about short, tall for a while. But I just don't think I would be the same person who I am today without. That was like, you're asking me that question, like points in my life, and I was like, being an only child, right, forced me to be extroverted, forced me to be creative in my room, just playing with like action figures and stuff. Instead of just playing with action figures, getting bored, and then going messing with my brother or sister or whatever, it's like I only had the toys, right? So it's like, when the toys got boring, what do? It's like, then I ended up like building zip lines and stuff for my toys, and like you expand beyond what you have, and it's kind of I'm really like grateful for that.
Have you heard of the whole like boredom principle? It's like being bored creates creativity.
Yeah. Have you ever heard the quote, being bored is boring, or I'm bored of being bored because being bored is boring?
No. That's funny. Say that one more time.
I don't know if I can. Honestly, I don't know.
Being bored
of
boring.
I said it way too fast. I can't even do that.
Whatever.
Being bored is boring. No. I don't know. Who knows? Replay the clip.
Replay it, rewind, bring it back.
All right. What do we want to move on to here?
Yeah, well, to bring it into the journey.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There was a question that I wrote down, which is kind of not tied to what we were talking about earlier, but I feel like that ability to move in the shadows. Is there stuff on this list that you wrote that you feel like you focused on a lot while you were moving in the shadows?
Yeah, I mean, just becoming a career, like everything. I could argue that everything on that list is because of it's the result of it, but it's again, I'm not saying that me moving in the shadows means that I was like a very unattractive, overweight, like I didn't have all these things like that are considered unattractive or unappealing. You know what I mean? Again, I was very fortunate, like I was a very healthy kid and everything. But yeah, like I think like being an only child made me more creative. Being and more outgoing, right? And more outgoing made me meet more outgoing people, which had me meet creative people. But it also did the opposite. It got me more curious to meet people who were taller than me, more reserved than me. Like most of my friends, I always say this, but most of my friends are taller than me and introverted, you know? And it's like, I love that balance. And like, it's all that stuff is, I mean, life is literally just a ripple effect, right?
Tell me more about that. How is life a ripple effect?
I mean, like, it's like, you're granted a set of cards or whatever metaphor you want to use, right? Mm-hmm. And you come into this life with you and what you got. Mm-hmm. And everything, and then you make choices based off of the situation you're given, and those choices are gonna ripple, right? If you grew up with like 5 brothers and sisters in the house, you have the choice to stay in the house and only have relationships with those people and be strictly a family, and there's nothing wrong with that, being strictly a family friend kind of person, which I know of a couple of people like that. Mm-hmm. And they love and adore their family, and then, or some people just, they make the choice of like, I can't stand it here, or maybe I do love them, but I just gotta go meet other people, you know what I mean? So it's, so all kinds of, there's millions of different things like that.
Kind of like the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
Just like that you make
literally.
a choice and that it affects your future.
Literally.
But it also doesn't mean that the one choice you made at one point in time is the whole reason your personality is the way it is. Yeah. You can always change and you can make a new decision. But I think for anybody listening, like, what I get out of that and thinking about my own decisions is that I had to make decisions or else I wouldn't have pivoted, or I wouldn't have failed, or I wouldn't have known where to stop or change or do something else. Because there's a lot of times when I felt like I should just not do anything. I could like sit and watch movies for hours, and that's a decision. And watching movies is a huge part of my past.
I do that.
Stacks of movies. I don't know if the camera can see it, but I got a little blockbuster up there. It's some of my favorite movies. And I've spent a lot of time watching film, but making decisions to like start businesses or even just do this podcast are like things that I know, and I have a lot of experience doing this now, where I know that maybe this won't pan out. Maybe it'll just be like something that I tried, and I'm glad I tried it because now I know that that's not what I want to do.
Yeah.
So the ripple effect is, it's like, it's a good metaphor, but it's also, I don't want people to think like, if I make this decision now, it has huge implications for later. Yeah. It's really just making a decision so that you can move on and think through what's going to happen next, right? How are you going to position yourself in comparison to that decision? Because if you didn't make a decision at all, you're still floating in space. But once you choose to put your thrusters in a direction, you might go the wrong way. You might go entirely in the wrong direction. Yep. But then how do you recognize that and move in the right direction.
Yep. It's, you know, the best decision you can make is to make a decision. And because when you make a decision, it allows you, all it does is give you more answers to make more decisions.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, and you know, I hated that phrase of like, yeah, I know, I can't, these guys.
Can't even believe it, dude.
Take 2.
Yeah, we'll
Take 17. But yeah, it's like, you know, it's like, oh man, I got thrown off. What do you call that? The decisions that I make now are only going to allow me to make better decisions or different decisions.
Yeah, because every second you live, you're getting older, you're learning, your neural pathways. No matter what anyone tells you, you're constantly learning and developing. Yeah. I have seen Instagram reels of 80-year-olds starting their photography journey or their artistic journey. So the fact that like people say your brain stops developing at 25 is just totally wrong. Totally wrong. I'm 33 and I'm sitting across from somebody who's 25, and you have probably done more than I did when I was, you know, in that younger developing quote unquote brain state, and like now I'm just having more fun. I'm realizing that making the decisions that I want to make and pivoting quickly is actually more important than just staying the course and being moderately happy. I guess like the thing that kills me is when people talk about their job as being good enough. Right? They're just like, it's fine. Yeah. What do you have to say to this?
I was gonna say, bringing it back just a schmids, was decision. The words decision and important are always like handcuffed together. At least in my life, they've always been a double deal, a wombo combo, if you will.
Wombo
right?
combo.
And it's ridiculous because it's like I'm learning right now that, you know, a big struggle in my life now and in the past few years have been not making decisions, and it's kept me stagnant. You know what I mean? Skateboarding, life, whatever it is. You know what I mean?
It's actually interesting to hear you say that because I feel like you are a person that doesn't get hung up on that very often. So, do you have an
that's
example?
like pretty much the biggest struggle in my life.
Well, give me one example of that.
Dude, I mean, I can literally talk about like the plateau, my personal feeling of plateau for skateboarding. It's like, you know, it's like you just get stuck, or it's like after my surgeries and stuff, you just kind of, quitting is never a thought in my head of skating. People ask me that all the time, especially after they've heard like my surgeries and stuff. They're like, do you ever think? Just one big one. My right ankle's all metal, and then I've had other surgeries that are not skate related, but like heart and brain and all that. And then so it's like, with the implications of those things also, it's like, you know, also just like simple things. Like if you roll your ankle and you sprain it and you're out for like 3 months, it's like, ugh, you know what I mean? Anyway, my plateau comes from the opposite, actually. It wasn't the fear of falling anymore. It was just like, all right, I've gained this much experience and this much experience of failure of falling, right? And getting hurt and going through the physical therapy process, all that. And being like, looking at the future of what tricks are ahead, right? To improve my level of skating, right? Are those tricks what I really want? And because the risk of those tricks at the level I'm at, they have a higher risk than reward ratio. You know what I mean? To learn to ollie, jump on a skateboard, right? There's not much risk. Like, the biggest thing that happens when people learn how to ollie is they land back on the board wrong and they kind of slip back. And you fall on your butt or your back and you get the wind blown out of you. Worst case scenario. Usually it's not even that. And it's pretty much all reward, no risk. But when you're looking at doing like 540s and all this, you're going upside down and stuff, it's like you're starting to look at some serious like potential for risk. So my plateau came from being actually super happy with where I was at and not really wanting to take on any more risk for the reward. And so
you were still enjoying the tricks that you were doing.
Oh yeah, I was enjoying skateboarding the most actually, because there was no pressure. I'd go to the skate park that day or wherever I was skating, and I would do tricks that not that I knew I could land. I'd still challenge myself a little bit, but like I wouldn't be doing something super duper gnarly that I would have a high risk of, you know, injury or, you know what I mean? If I hesitate or mess up, you know. But yeah, so why were we talking about that though?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to remember is like, I was talking a little bit about how each decision that we make changes the course of where we're going next. And we were talking about I have to make a decision.
And importance and decision are handcuffed together. Yes. And we'll jump on that.
Uncouple those in your mind?
I'm learning right now that I was talking about how lately I haven't been making decisions, or lately the lack of decisions in my life have kept me stagnant. You know what I mean? So a big part of that was turning into kind of like a yes man. So I've been, the last like year or two, I've been just trying to say yes to a lot, or yes to everything really, and it's been awesome. Like it's been a lot better. I've joined a jujitsu or a ninjutsu group, which is cool. Ninjutsu is like it's like the oldest, like, don't quote me. It's like the oldest like martial arts, I think, ever. Feudal Japan is literally like ninjas, right? And it's like, but I like it. It's a huge philosophy for any of those interested. It's a huge philosophical art. It's like there is a lot of like the physical defense, in combat defense and everything, but there's reasons behind each thing. And it goes into the anatomy of the body. It's all this super cool stuff. But basically, like.
Is being a yes man new for you then? I always
yeah.
been a yes man.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I've known you for what, like 3
no,
or 4
dude.
years
Ask
now?
my friends and family. I've always been the pickiest person on the planet.
Yeah. Well, I used to be that way with food.
And just, you know what? Saying no gave me a very comfortable life, and I already had a comfortable life, so it kept me in the comfortable life. Okay.
Give me examples of other things that are picky about. So
food, traveling, honestly. I wasn't
any relationships or anything come into play with that? Business?
Really just came to day-to-day tiny things that amount. Basically, it affected those tiny habits that you're supposed to make. You know, it's like billionaires have like these 5 habits that make them billionaires. You know what I mean? But really, they're just good habits, right? And I had a lot of stunted good habits.
Give me an example of how you started to break free of that.
Just literally just saying yes. Like, as stupid as it...
Did somebody, like, was there a mentor?
How I started that journey was...
Was there a mentor that just said, Adrian, dude?
Yeah, how I started that journey was I was given the opportunity to go on a retreat with...
How long ago was this? Give me context.
Oh, my God.
Sorry.
I'm so bad with timing. I think it was last year.
1 year ago?
Last year, yeah.
Oh,
1 year ago, yeah.
So even that recent.
Yeah. I can look on my phone and look at the pictures, but it's, I think it was last year. And, August of last year. And it was, just a retreat, a wellness retreat. I met different people there, and they were all there for different reasons. There was a family there, like a mom and dad and their son. There was a woman from the Navy, and, high ranking and everything. And all of them came from different backgrounds and had different things. One of them was like a professional musician. One of them was a fashion designer person, and one of them was a lawyer who just didn't like being a lawyer, you know what I mean? And it was guided by 2 people. One of them I'm working with right now, and as a mentor, and he's helping me with one of my current businesses that I'm trying to get going. And but yeah, being a yes man was like just saying yes to going to Greece to that retreat, and it was like, and like traveling and stuff made me super nervous always, but it got me over that, and it was a great experience. So saying yes to trying, I hate vegetables, dude. Like, you finally got me on camera saying it, but I don't like vegetables. Some vegetables I'm okay with, like carrots, all that stuff, like green beans, like broccoli, all that stuff.
I mean,
but like, there's so many like crazy stuff, so many crazy foods I don't like. Like,
but food is a perfect example of like in your comfort zone.
Yes.
And then pushing that a little bit is scary and just it's gross. Like you don't want to eat something and just be like, I spent, especially if you're spending money on it. Yeah. So I find it very difficult to be adventurous when I go out to eat. I'd much rather buy something I know I'm gonna like, rather than spend $30 or whatever on a meal that I might not like. So I had a similar experience to you, but 10 years ago. A friend of mine invited me over for dinner, and I was always a picky eater, and he was like, "Man, what do you like to eat? Do you like spicy food?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "Do you like seafood?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Bro, shut up. I'm going to make you something you're going to like." It.
That's the worst thing you can hear.
Actually.
You know they're going to fail, and it's not because of them, it's because of you.
You know what? I ended up liking it.
Really?
And it was something that I wouldn't have ordered, wouldn't have ever tried, but because of that, and because of him pushing me, I realized what else am I limiting myself in my life? If I'm choosing not to eat food just because I think I don't like it, you know, people say your taste buds change over time, and there's science to back up some of that, but I really do think that like we just get really stuck in these patterns of what we tell ourselves.
Comes from the change of our our habits or decision making.
Yeah, so him cooking me something that I wouldn't normally eat allowed me to go outside of my comfort zone and experience something positive, and I think that's something we don't do very often, which is curate an experience that will be positive, that is outside of our comfort zone. Yeah. And then from that point, try to make a few connections and build on that experience. So what happened was now I'm a very open eater. Pretty much I'll eat anything. As long, there's no caveat to that. I mean, I'm vegetarian, so like I typically won't eat meat or fish or chicken or any of that, but if it's within my scope of what I am comfortable eating, what am I saying?
You said there's no caveat to that?
Well, it's just
you said caveat, and I thought caviar.
Caviar, no.
It's
just I said caveat because for me, eating is now I want to experience new stuff, and even when I go out, I'll try to order something new on the menu. You know what I mean? But I don't just order something random. Yeah. I order something that maybe has like one thing in it that I like. Like if it's got cashews in it, I'm like, oh, I fucking love cashews. Yeah. You know, or it's got a peanut sauce, and I'm like, I've never heard of this thing before, but it's got peanut sauce on it, so like, why don't I try it and see if I like that? And usually that opens me up to a new experience. Yep. Like, hey, I've never had this dish before, and it's from a country that I've never been to, but maybe now if I go to that country, now I have like one thing that I've ordered, and then it'll open me up to maybe trying something in that country's cuisine that I wouldn't normally order. So this builds into my habits. So like I've taken it from food and I've put it into practice in business, in building my creative like portfolio. If you know me, you know that I dabble in mediums like photography, painting, drawing, sculpture. I do collage, I do mosaic, I do pretty much anything. I've never tied myself to a medium for creativity. And I feel like people do that with the decision making and importance coupling that you mentioned earlier. They say, I am a painter. So they're not open to an experience of going and building a sculpture with somebody, when that could give them a new experience or a new way to view painting. Or they might say, dude, this is way better than painting. I'm going to start doing this now. Yeah. I feel like people are afraid of changing.
I was going to say, a lot of the times when somebody says, I am this, it's like, and that thing is the thing keeping them, like, they're restricting themselves to this one thing, right? A lot of the time, that's not on purpose either. Like, they didn't actually they're saying that they made that decision, but they never actually made that decision, right? It's like, that's just comfort.
You're saying that it was
that's just by comfort. Comfort made them, like, they had this profound experience that made them strongly identify with this part of themselves, and they stick to it, which is not a bad thing, but they only stick to it. And that's comfort talking. That's like, You know what I mean?
Yeah, so bring me back a little bit. So back to the retreat. You got invited on this retreat, but what made you say yes? Was it just that you like this person?
Well,
what got you
there
to
was...
break out of the no?
Yeah, this was right after I had broken up with a relationship of three years.
That can be an opening experience.
Oh, yeah.
And to experience something new.
And she was an awesome person. You know what I mean? She was really an awesome person. And we just had different timings for our life goals, you know? But, you know, like obviously everybody tells you relationships, they show you a lot more about yourself than they do the other person, or as much as the other person. And she and I, it really showed why we got along, is because we were both happy about the same things, but we were both equally picky about the same things.
You were both in your comfort zones.
We were both so in our comfort zones and so picky as a result of it that I found it pretty extremely unattractive. And then I looked at myself in the mirror and was like, this is literally what all my friends and family think of me in that specific moment when I turn down vegetables or when I turn down something stupid, right? Without giving it a try first or giving it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
I
like,
know what you mean.
it's kind of it's a little bit childish. Like, it's like a little bit like silly, right? Like, just try it, and then if you really don't like it, it's like nobody's gonna like bully you for it. But it's like, you know, like don't just say no. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's the thing that we both did. We both said no to a lot of things in life because it kept us in our comfort zones. And so, you know, right after that breakup, I was kind of like, you know, I think I wrote it on the book up there under me time, self-evolution and not spending enough time with myself. You know what I mean? You know, when you're in a relationship, you're in a space of two, right? And it's important to focus on yourself while in a relationship, you know, and that's a whole different conversation. But, you know, while in those 3 years, that was 3 years that I learned a lot, but I also didn't grow as, like, Adrian. When I got out of that relationship, the Adrian I was before I got in that relationship, like, in terms of, like, life status or, like, where I want to be in life or, you know what I mean? Just the level of life that I was in, right? Hadn't actually changed at all, not one bit. And I was like, whoa, where did those 3 years go? You know what I mean? In terms of my self-evolution,
right.
You know?
Yeah.
And, yeah. And so I was like, dude, I got to start saying yes. Like, and this opportunity presented itself, and I really didn't want to go. And I just said yes. And I said yes, and I ignored it for the next, like, I think it was like a couple months until I had to go to the retreat. And I was offered it, and I was like, yep. And then I didn't want to hear about it. I didn't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I got my plane tickets and everything the same day. And I just like, and then I didn't touch or think about it until the day we had to leave. Mm-hmm. And I think the week before, it was brought up a couple times, and I just like, oh my God, I wanted to bail. I wanted to say no. Mm-hmm. I wanted to just bail out. You know what I mean? And get back in my no zone. You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, I think that's important to talk about.
Yeah.
We do have to start wrapping it up because my roommate's band is going to start playing. So.
Really? That's it? That's the whole podcast?
Well, we're going to wrap it up soon is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
But because the band is start playing.
Okay.
And we might do another version of this.
Yeah,
more tight.
We got all this stuff on the board.
Yeah, totally. But what I was going to say is I think it's important to note that, like, doing it in small doses, not saying yes to, like, 10 new things that you have never done before, that will overwhelm you.
Yeah.
And as I become more involved in art practices, in the beginning, I'm kind of one of those people that get obsessed, and so I start saying I want to do all of these things that are like of a professional artist, like doing an hour of practice a day and also learning anatomy and also doing this, and you get burned out. I think when people talk about burnout, it's like the kind of this amalgamous thing. Yeah. But what I can tell you from my experience is that doing things in small doses that like you're going in the right direction is like gonna catalyze your journey into like ramping up speed, right? So like from 1 mile an hour, at least you're moving in the direction. And instead of slamming your foot on the gas and trying to go 100 miles an hour, you just continue to go 1 mile an hour faster.
Yeah.
Every day. And in 300 days, you're gonna be going 300 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So like, don't take on 1 hour of practice a day and anatomy and all this stuff like I did. It really burned me out. I had to start with just drawing when it felt comfortable, and then doing a drawing lesson when I was like getting stuck. Instead of being a self-taught artist, I was like, now I'm a self-improving artist. Yeah. And now I'm going to seek out a class in value studies because I don't know how to shade anything. Yeah. So it was like more or less expanding my my comfort zone, because I was like, it's scary to start learning about that stuff because you're going to fail and it's going to look bad. Yeah. So I want to say that what you're talking about is it's important. Maybe would you say taking on that one thing was the push?
I was going to play devil's advocate, actually.
Go for it.
I agree. Again, this is always going to depend on who you really are. And you actually have to ask yourself who you really are. Are you the person who... Obviously, I think, again, too much of anything is not a good thing, right? So taking too much of yes, everything in your path, right, can be too much for some people, right? But, you know, and maybe you can only do one yes at a time, you know what I mean? But some people, I think, like myself, were just so stunted. Like, it had actually such a big effect, and I was so locked in on no, being a no man, that I think it's a good thing to say yes to something big and keep saying yes to, like, you know, maybe not 10 big things. Don't take on 10 new projects that are going to take months and months to complete, right? But say yes to one thing every day, you know, that you wouldn't usually do. You know what I mean?
I like that.
Yeah.
That's good advice.
Yeah. And, you know, just I wanted to finish up the thing I was saying earlier about handcuffing decisions, the word decision and important together. Yeah. And there are a lot of decisions that can be important, you know what I mean? But not every decision is important. But making a decision is important. And that's a big thing that I'm learning right now. Making a decision is important. And just making a decision. Yes or no, left or right, up or down. Just make one, right? And because doing that, no matter if you fail or succeed, you've still made a step forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And then getting kind of like an overview of your journey, like, how do you want to wrap it up? What would you say is next for you? Like, you're one of the most successful people that I know, truly. Like, you've done a lot with your 25 years, and I think that that's something that other people are going to get from this, is the decisions that you've made, positive or negative, have led you to have all these businesses and ideas. And so, where are you going next, and what do you think about your journey so far?
Well, right now, I'm currently in a relationship with a very awesome person. And yeah, and she is one of the most uncomfortable decisions I've made in my life. And she continues to make me feel uncomfortable in the sense of for the better.
Challenging you.
Yeah. She is the biggest yes I've ever said. You know what I mean? So yeah, and you know, so where do I go from here? Well, she has a lot of plans for herself that I'm thinking about hopping onto, and that make me extremely uncomfortable thinking about it and nervous. So yeah. I just gotta keep saying yes, you know? Yeah.
Love that. And then the last thing I want to ask you is if you were to change the word importance, handcuffing that to decision making,
Mm-hmm.
what word would you choose as the second word to, as soon as somebody thinks make a decision,
Mm-hmm.
what should the next word be coupled with that?
I'm only thinking of the phrase "just do it."
Really? Yeah.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah,
Nice.
just do it.
I love it because that is gonna help people.
Shout out
make that
Shia LaBeouf.
for sure.
But yeah, literally just do it. Like just make decisions.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I fear a lot is when I make a decision that it's locked in, that it's forever, that it is important, and so I do need to take that advice in.
You know
and
what?
Just do it.
The word, it's a letter. It's A. Like make a decision.
So it's a coupling before.
Yeah.
Decision.
Just make a decision. Yeah.
And that takes a lot of the weight off of it.
There's so much pressure with the word decision, and I'm like, just make a decision, because it just implies that there's a whole eternal amount of decisions left to make. You know what I mean? So just make one. Yeah.
Cool.
And it really, yeah.
That's great. Well, tell me where we can find you, social media.
Oh.
If
Official.
you want to.
Oh yeah. I was just like, it's funny. We were gonna talk about social media, and are we still gonna talk about social media? No.
No, we're just focused on the journey. Those were prompts to help
Oh.
you in case we got stuck. It wasn't a
Okay.
framework.
Well, you can find me at officially_Zelo, ZELO.
Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah.
I always say Zello.
Yeah.
Is that
You know what's funny? It actually is Zello, but it's like I say Zelo because it's been like Americanized by my friends who say it. Zelo. But yeah, Zello comes from when I was skating in Paris. There was this kid. Like I said, I'm always a goofy little guy, and so I'm always full of energy. Like I'm a very energetic person, and this friend, I was skating for like a week in Orléans, and or Paris 18. That's the park, if you know where it is. I'm not sure if it's Orléans or Marseille, but
Put it up on the page.
but there was a kid there who was like, hey man, like, if you guys know the word zealous, like overzealous or just zealous, right? Full of energy, whatever, right? And that was like the one English word he knew. He was like, zealous, oh my god, zealous. And then he shortened it to, he's like, don't quote my French here, but he was like, I'm gonna call you Zelo.
Zello.
Yeah, T'appelles Zelo. And then, so, Zelo. There you go. Officially Zelo.
Oh,
Officially zealous.
Oh, I love hearing the backstory of that.
Yeah,
Thanks
dude.
for sharing. That's really cool.
Yeah, dude. Is that a wrap?
It's pretty close, unless there's anything else you want to talk about. I mean, I know that you had a lot of stuff written down.
4:25. We got 4 minutes 25. That's funny. 425 is my favorite number.
425 is
Yeah,
your favorite number?
425. It's also my birthday. 0425.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you.
We're not doing another podcast after this?
We can. If you
Yeah,
want.
we gotta keep going, dude.
The band is gonna practice. It's gonna be too annoying for. I'm not gonna edit that out. It's too
Yeah,
much.
you're right.
Yeah. I mean, we should get together again when there's.
Shout
no
out
band.
Park Carbon.
Shout out to Park Carbon, for sure. The roommate, the homie, on his own journey.
On his own journey.
Yeah. I guess like for me, it was like more about trying to tighten up like. Yeah, like this was sort of the test run.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know what questions I was going to ask. I didn't even write down any questions really. So sort of giving that to you wasn't to like figure out what we wanted to talk about, just if we ever got stuck.
Yeah.
How could we reference some of those things? Because I'd like next time if we do it again, if we want to like re-record the whole thing, like how can we pull more from examples of our failures and successes rather than talking
In the generalistics.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I feel like giving people just like, hey, like this quote or like you should do this. Like I don't want to talk like you should. I just want to be like, well, yeah, I want to give real examples. Like, hey, I started this business and then I just gave up on it. I've done that probably 6 times, and I want to talk about that during these
I think you have way
podcasts.
more experience than I do.
I probably do have a lot more than you
Yeah.
do, but that doesn't mean that we can't talk about yours, and then you can ask me questions, and
Yeah.
I can reflect that back in,
Yeah.
in a way that talks about my experience.
But the camera's still rolling?
Yeah, it should be.
Because it's 2 minutes 30, and it took about 2 minutes of like setting up this on the
This
last.
one's still rolling. This is the first one that I started.
Oh, okay.
But
How much is on there?
I don't know.
Oh.
Whatever time he's left on yours. I told you to start.
Oh, really?
I mean,
Okay.
Tell me about how you started modeling. Tell me the story.
All right,
You
the
said there's a
story. Here we go. Here's the big story. It was a Sunday evening. Beautiful Sunday evening. Birds were chirping.
Mhm.
The grass was
Oh,
glistening.
Oh yeah, you're bad at
10
time.
years ago.
10 years ago.
I was in sophomore year when I started. And I was on my couch. And I had written up. So I was just doom scrolling on Instagram. And at the time in high school I was really big into lifting. And you know what I mean? I was like 100 pounds when I entered freshman year. And little squatty boy. I was just a little squatty boy. But I was really big into lifting. Yeah. And so I was doom scrolling, and I noticed, here are all of these tiny businesses under 20,000 followers that are all just fitness brands. Everybody's just trying to make a fitness t-shirt, a fitness apparel brand, right? And everybody has at least once gotten in their DMs like, hey, want to be an ambassador to this brand? By the way, it's not. Be careful of those.
Yeah.
You know. But it was at the time when that was really starting to happen. So a lot of them were a lot less scammy.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang, here are all these companies, and they have like 3 or 4 models each that they just keep reposting with different clothes on, like really small brands.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, how do I get this clothes for free? And so I wrote up a BS. I went in my notes page and I wrote up a BS paragraph of like, hey, I've been following your stuff since I was like your 5th follower. You know what I mean? Like, I've loved your stuff since you were at like 10 followers, And I love what you do. I love this. It was a very generalistic thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just copy and pasted it and I sent it to like 40 or 50 of those companies specifically under 20K.
Wow. 40
Just,
or 50?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, which wasn't hard. I just searched up fitness, hashtag fitness.
Didn't have to be local. It was just kind of
No.
wherever.
Yeah, it was just like sending this message out into DMs, into the ether. And I was just like, just for the lol, just for the jokes of it. And dude, surprisingly, 2 got back to me. I don't know if they're still cooking or not, but Physique God Apparel and Loyal Fitness.
So what happened? Did they just send you clothes?
Yeah,
Did
they
say,
sent me
cool.
messages back being like, and basically in that paragraph it was like, hey, I love your stuff, all this buttery like stuff.
Butter 'em up.
Yeah, butter them up, and then I hit him with the like, if you want to send me like free, I'm an amateur model. Like if you send me free stuff, I'll get photos for you and stuff, and I can either send it back or or I can get it for free, the clothes for free, whatever. And 2 of them got back to me and agreed.
Wow.
And we came to an agreement, and I became like their, at the time, again, they only had 2 or 3 models,
Mm-hmm.
and usually it's the owners themselves. The owners themselves are already pretty fit people, so they can just model their own clothing. And so, but I fit a type of person, a body type, that would represent people who are new to the gym, people who are not have 30-inch biceps. You know what I mean? Dwayne the Pebble Johnson is what they call me. Anyway, so yeah, and that's how I got started in my modeling. And they just kind of like, I was taking pictures for them, and I was with Physique God Apparel for like only like 3 or 4 months or something. But then Loyal Fitness was first, and I was with them for like a year and a half or something. And then they got me through my
Did that ever turn into a paid gig, or was it pretty much just send you free clothes, get some photos, learn how this works?
A little bit off the record, yeah. Okay. Like unofficially, like you know, not on a payroll or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a ton of free clothes at the time, and then, but yeah, a little bit of endorsement pay.
Okay.
But after that, you know, I was like, wow. I looked back a year and a half, and I was like, wow, how did this meme of a paragraph get me into modeling, right? Modeling.
Yeah.
But it, you know, it's funny, like, talking to my friends who were photographers and stuff, and just being in front of the camera all of a sudden, and just kind of faking it till I make it, right? Gave me that perspective of like, wow, you can actually fake it till you make it. You know what I mean? And it's not really faking it till you make it. Exactly. It's like you're just going out and doing what you see people doing it, but on like a budget. You know what I mean?
That's all it is. I feel like the phrase "fake it till you make it" is so cliche. People just say it. Yeah. But it's not.
And you're actually not really faking any of it.
Yeah,
you're not faking any of it.
Trying it. It's make a decision. Yeah. My decision is sending out these DMs to companies and asking them if they're willing to take a shot on a person who's an amateur model. Yeah. And even just thinking you want to model makes you an amateur model. Yeah. You don't have to have had a portfolio or even a shoot to say, I want to help you get some photos for your brand. Yeah. And I'm willing to do it for cheap or for free. Yeah. So that we can exchange. I love that you put in there that you're willing to send the clothes back. I think that's huge because it doesn't scream scam to those people. Not a lot of those people are getting DMs from models. They might be getting a few, but ideally it's somebody who's like trying to build up their portfolio, or you can tell has ambition. Yep. You know, we all have a conscious mind, and when we hear people talk about what they're passionate about, it comes through. You know what I mean? So the fact that you got 2 companies on a kind of a bullshit email, like
definitely VS email.
But now I feel like you do a much better job at sounding like a professional.
Yeah. Again,
because
this was like
you've been doing it for 10 years, but you're still faking it. I mean, we're all still faking it. Yeah. You know, like the difference between you and Shia LaBeouf is only a few thousand more jobs. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's it, and maybe some dedication. You know, you have a lot of hobbies, and maybe he only has like a few, where he's like putting his craft at the top of his pyramid. Yeah. You know, some people, myself in particular, I'm a good example of this. Is like I get obsessive. I get obsessive about one thing, and I kind of let all my friends and family fall away, and that's not as healthy. But it also shows you where my priorities are, and my family and my friends know that about me. Shout out to my family. You know, like they've been great at giving me space when I need it. You know, we don't talk every day. Yeah. And I live in DC. They live all over the country, and for me, prioritizing building myself and my voice as an artist is paramount. It's like something that I value so much that they respect my ability to do that, and that it's healthiest for me. So there are other people who have like a host of different activities that they're putting their time into, and they need to figure out how to balance all of those. Yeah. Because life is literally a balance board of all these activities, friends, hobbies, money, time, health. These are all things that kind of make their way on. So tell me a little bit about your plate. What are the things you're balancing and juggling? Did you want me to finish the story? Yeah, sure. Sorry.
You're good. So pretty much I just doubled over and did it again. I was like, wow, after reflecting back and being like, you know, this is genuine but also BS, like, you know, message that I sent out, it was like, got me in this situation or this place in my life, right? And I was like, that's wild. And I was like, so immediately after reflecting, I went on Google and I was like, how to be a real model, right? Like
that's a great place to start.
Like how to be a real model, right? Yeah. And there are a plethora of YouTube videos of people in the industry far more experienced than me who have been all from different perspectives. There are YouTubers who were cameramen in the industry or photographers in the industry who put out those videos. There are people who are the designers, the actual like makeup artists, right? But they all know everything about that industry, so they just kind of give their tips to anyone who wants to be, you know. an amateur model. And so just look up one of those videos and they tell you the criteria of like what you need to do to at least like legitimize yourself to go to an audition or something, right?
So from there, was it off to the races?
Bro, that's what I did. I literally just was like...
Took the advice. Did you write it down? What did you do next? Like, after you listened to all these
After
videos?
that, pretty much just to recap a lot of those videos, they're just going to tell you to get good profile pics, a profile headshot, full body, right? And actually, funny enough, if you just... next is to find just look at reputable agencies near you. Not necessarily modeling, talent agencies. Because you never know. Your looks might get you into modeling. Your looks and or personality might get you into acting. Might get you into a small role. You never know. You could be, 50 years down the line, you could be telling your grandkids like, oh yeah, I got in this... I was in a Cheez-It commercial back in the 80s, you know what I mean? Or back in the early 2000s.
I was in a water ad?
Dude, see? Like...
Yeah. I got a modeling gig for a water company. Just photos for their website.
It's
I had a
just
fake
random.
wife. I had a fake kid.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
It's random.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, what a precarious thing to say and be in.
I mean, at the time, they wanted me to grow out my beard. They liked the shaggy kind of look. Like, they didn't want me to look like the classic model.
Yeah.
They definitely wanted me to portray an older person,
Yeah.
which was kind of funny to me.
Yeah.
You know? So it's interesting not knowing, because you think of models as like supermodel.
Yeah.
Know,
like Vogue. Like.
But no, there's opportunities out there for literally everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, but I just to wrap up my story was, I did that. I searched up reputable agencies. There's been bad situations with people getting into fake agencies that are not really modeling agencies, if you know what I'm saying.
Okay.
And so just be aware of those. Not hard to do though. Just like search up reputable ones.
Sure.
Do your research on them. And I'm not with them anymore, so I shall not disclose who I was with. But I was with them, and they helped me get gigs for some pretty good companies that got me paid.
You ended up doing it full time.
Yeah. And it was just gig after gig, But yeah, that was how I got into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny how you get into those things.
The fake it till you make it thing is really important. I think just people's mindset towards the cliche needs to change. So I guess like trying to think of another way to phrase it that would maybe like be helpful for people to remember, because fake it till you make it is just, it's so overplayed, it's so outdone, and the phrase I think works, but just putting a new spin on it, it's like do it till you make it. It's really just do it. Do it in any capacity.
Just do it.
Just do it. Your old phrase coming in.
Just go outside and play, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's important to say, do it because you're going to enjoy it. And I'm sure that there were times along the way that was not the easiest job, but there were probably also times when it was super fun and enjoyable. Yeah. You can talk a little bit about maybe an example of both, like a time that it wasn't so fun and a time that it was like, dude, this is like all I want to do.
For modeling?
Yeah.
Like specific shoots I've done and stuff?
Oh, whatever comes to mind. Is there like a specific time when you were modeling when you're like, this is not what I want to be doing? And is there a time when you were like, this is awesome, this is all I want to do, I want to continue this?
You know what? It was never all I wanted to do. It was always temporary for me.
Okay.
Always temporary. And the times that I really had fun was when I actually went to the amateur model scene and went to like DC street meets and like look up local like amateur modeling events where there's amateur models, amateur photographers, and you guys. It's just a big networking event. Meet those people. Those people are very, very real people, and you'll probably go on to work with a few of them personally.
There's one happening right now.
Yeah.
The DC Street Portrait Meet is happening.
Great
right
people
now.
there.
Yeah, so if you're local, shout out to Portrait Meet DC. They put on a free once a month photography and model meetup. So either way, I'm a photographer, so I go and I get to be creative with my camera gear and learn a little bit and work with a live person. And on the other side of the camera, the models also get to come out and get some experience, even if you have none.
Yeah,
dude.
dude.
And hang out, see how it works, ask lots of questions. It's a really great way to. I've had a lot of fun, kind of expanding my comfort zone with photography.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also expands.
Street Meet DC.
Yeah.
They do the same thing once a month.
Same thing.
Meetups.
Yep.
Check it out.
It's good, man. Even just from doing that. I mean, they are an official event, but it's not like, it's not like you're, but even just going to those like 2 or 3 times, you'll get a ton of experience. Mm-hmm. Like, you'll know what it's like to work with another model in the same frame. You'll know what it's like. You'll get literally hands-on modeling experience. You'll get hands-on what it's like to work with people, like physically, verbally, like, you know what I mean? Like, you learn how to be respectful in the scene. You learn how to work with people.
And you'll learn what you like and don't like. And
you'll learn etiquette of the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important for people to like experience that so they know if they want to do it again.
Yeah.
And it's a safe place because there's usually hundreds of people there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people to make sure that everyone's above board.
Yeah. Yeah. Times that I didn't want to or would rather not. Not really.
Yeah.
But, I would say a time is one that I wasn't necessarily a fan of modeling, is when I was working with a photographer who was very, very nice, very awesome, and they just had a vision that I was simply modeling for, that I wasn't really a fan of, but I'm a fan of them, and so I was just doing them a favor being their model for this cool artistic vision that they have. And I had no problem doing it. I just, it was just kind of like, it really reminds you of your connection with being a model. Because there's a difference between being a model and a mannequin. You know what I mean? And and when you're doing, and this was obviously, I didn't dread it. I didn't hate the experience. It was a normal experience. I just really, in that moment when I wasn't so interested in what I was doing, I wasn't connected to the art piece, right? So I was just tethered physically. You know what I mean? So that was the only time, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it's important to have both of those experiences so you know if you love it, right?
Yeah.
I have similar experiences in climbing where I fell in love with climbing at 21 years old and never looked back, Yeah. But there were times later on where I was working professionally in the climbing industry, building climbing routes, and there were moments where it was just not, the passion wasn't there. It wasn't living up to my expectation anymore. And it's hard to cope with that when you've told the story so many times. Like, I love climbing, I am a climber. Yeah. And then you have these experiences that change that perspective and go, I don't know if I love this experience of like getting my hand caught in the rope and like my eardrums getting blasted out from the drills constantly every day. And dropping a hold for the 1,000th time and getting shit from my boss for not setting whatever type of way. There's like moments where I learned that climbing was no longer fueling me as a passion, as a person, and I needed to pivot because we talked about this in the beginning. Yeah. We're people that follow our passions. Yeah. And there's not a lot you can do once that passion starts to take a nosedive. Yeah. So my advice for other people out there is when you're talking about success, failure, your journey, into learning who you want to be, and this is more advice for myself, is just listen to those little voices that are coming up as you're doing something that you might think you love, and if it's getting reinforcement messages or messages that say the opposite.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing climbing and the voice in the back of your head is, whoa, this is so amazing that I get to do this, that's a reinforcement. That's good.
Yeah.
And if that reinforcement is constant, that's great. But if you're having more voices start to take over that are like, oh man, this is hard on my body, or I'm getting really frustrated, or just not having fun creatively doing this, then that's kind of, I would say, more of the advice to start expanding your journey and trying something new.
Exactly. Yeah. It's funny because since you're talking about that and your experience with that, I wrote skating, injuries, setbacks, pro versus no.
Mm-hmm.
The injuries and setbacks can kind of talk about at another time, but pro versus no specifically. Since you're talking about a passion of yours that turned, it kind of lost its purity, right? It's like, I think I've always had a natural talent for skateboarding, and so I was considered pretty good as a young kid, right? So the question of becoming pro when I'm older was always a thing. And even now, today, I get asked if I am pro. Like, sometimes. I don't think I'm good enough to be, I don't think I'm at the pro level yet. But I'm definitely, skating amongst those kinds of people, that level of skaters. So it's a fair question to ask, but it's like, make sure that, your passion challenges you and keeps you stimulated and pressures you sometimes. That's good, but make sure your passion doesn't turn into a pressure passion. Don't feel pressured to do your passion. You know what I mean?
Can you talk about what
that
means?
Yeah, it's okay.
In terms of you skating?
When your passion's challenging you and it's getting harder, skill-wise or level-wise, difficulty, whatever, right? Like, whether it's a trick you can't do, whether it's, what do you call the line? Is it a line in rock climbing?
They're all roots. Yeah.
Okay, roots. Like, whether it's a specific route that you came up with and you are in love with it, but you physically can't do it, right? Like, it's challenging you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's putting this pressure on you because it came from your mind. So it's, you know what I mean? And it's good. That's good pressure.
Mm-hmm.
But there can be sometimes a time where there's a pressure to do your passion for a greater purpose, beyond the purity, meaning beyond the purity of just doing it for enjoyment, right? So like maybe you're getting to an age where, let's say a tennis player gets really good at tennis, but and they're just out of college, right? And so people are saying, hey, are you going to look into becoming pro, or are you going to look into getting a day job? You know what I mean? So then your passion becomes pressurized by external thoughts and opinions of like, if you need to turn it into something, or if you tried to turn it into something and you need for it to work out this way. It's like, no, it doesn't ever need to. Your need and passion should never intertwine. You know what I mean? You don't do a passion because you need to do it. You do it because you want to do it. Like, you know what I mean? That's what at the base, I think that's what always keeps your passion healthy. You know what I mean? And it keeps it a passion. The minute it becomes a need, whether that be, like a need from like external forces.
Classic example of art is that, you created your day job, and now art is you're gonna fund yourself with art. And then it stops being a passion and starts becoming need to pay the bills.
Yeah.
I need to do art to pay my bills.
Yeah. And so I've always said, even as a kid, you can ask my mom, even as a kid, anytime anybody asked me if I want to go pro, I was like, no, never. I do not want to go pro. If I was offered pro for a company, to be a pro for a company, I would decline it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be sponsored by them. I'd love to be riding for them, but I would not be pro. Because being pro pressurizes. And, you know, you have to put out this part, or you have to... nowadays, by the way, a part, for people who don't know, is putting together a big video that you would collectively create over a year's time, and you would put it out as a massive advertisement for that
multiple clips.
Yeah, multiple clips.
Tricks.
Yes, of these crazy things.
In either really well known spots or spots that are around your scene.
Yep. Just doing crazy stuff, and people talk about it, and that's advertisement, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays it's different. Same but different. Now it's just posting 20-30-second reels on social media, which is a good and bad thing. It's a good thing because, you know, you don't have to stress about one singular project, but it's bad because once you put one thing up, it's like, okay, when's the next one? You know what I mean? It's more of a constant.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
But yeah, pro versus no, I'm going to go with no for skateboarding. Because I made a decision a long time ago to keep that pure. My version of pure, by the way. I have no query, I don't know. I shouldn't have said that word. I have no issue with anybody making their passion their career. Go and do that. That's awesome.
It's a way to like kind of, well, I could talk from experience of thrusting myself into the climbing world.
Yeah.
I basically went headlong without knowing much about the industry, and the industry didn't know much about the industry.
Yeah.
Climbing in America has only existed in climbing gyms for about 40, 50 years, somewhere along that timeline.
Yeah.
So when I got into it 10 years ago, definitely was like just starting to come together as far as like people knowing what they wanted to do. But yeah, it was scary but exciting to be a part of a movement that's changing and growing and learning what it's going to be. And there are many industries that are like that. And I think it was good for me to go headlong into it. Like I said, a bit of an obsessive personality where I want to know everything. Like when I started learning about art, it was not just like techniques, it was art history, it was artists, it was the entirety of art. How can I consume knowledge that can give me a foundation to making my decisions? Because like I do have a hard time making a decision. So for me, knowing what important people have come through and made good decisions can help me feel better about the decisions I'm making. Because I can say why I made that decision. Whereas like now I actually prefer just making a decision. You know, even if I'm copying a mistake that's been made in the past, like it will help you learn what you like to do rather than curbing your decision to something that's going to be groundbreaking or new. So I kind of went on a tangent.
But yeah, I feel like I'm at a point where making a decision for me is also, even though I was talking about like being a yes man and everything, making a decision is still really, really hard for me. Like,
it's still hard for me too.
Yeah. Feels harder now. I don't know if that's just because of the consequences of, or the ramifications of what comes. I feel like making a decision, it's true when you get older, the decisions you make have more weight, whether it's intense or not. They just, for some reason, they just come with more things.
I think it's because when you have you have protection of your parents or whoever your caretakers are, your decisions are ultimately on them.
Yeah.
And now when you're an adult, they're all on
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Or if you have kids and a family, that can be not just on you, but also on the people around you.
But I was just gonna say, I still have no clue what I want to do with my life.
That's
why
a good thing.
Right now I am doing pivoting. That was a big word I wanted to use earlier, was in terms of making a decision. We've been talking about like just make a decision. And if that means making your passion a career, go for it. You know what I mean?
I'm an advocate
And
of that.
a decision is never end all be all. You know what I mean? Like, even if you make the worst decision of your life and it gets you in a very bad place in life, if you rob a bank or you do something horrible to somebody else, like, and it puts you in a not good situation, they can always undo itself, right?
I don't know about that one.
What do you
go
mean?
to prison, you might be in jail for
No, but that's what I'm
years.
saying.
Can you do that?
Well, no, you can
So
pivot.
could
You
be
can
murder.
pivot.
Like, let's not use crime as an example.
Alright. We'll edit that one out then.
That's too funny.
I had it.
You're
I had
on
it.
one, dude.
I had it in my head, and then you started laughing. I couldn't take it seriously anymore.
My God, dude. Yeah, I don't know if crime is a good example. I think any non-crime related decision is totally fine. Let's see if we have battery enough for one more round.
Mm-hmm.
We are.
What's that?
Are you? Oh,
Yeah, what's up?
can I just grab some paper?
Yeah.
Sound
Scrap paper?
Hey, handsome.
Sound, dude.
Handsome.
Scrap
Yeah,
paper?
just scrap paper. Well, we gotta write on it, but if there's
Rag
a bag,
dolls?
that's fine. Yeah.
Is it rag or rog?
Rag. Oh, sick. Thanks.
Are you guys jamming?
Yeah, we're writing.
Is that to protect your hearing?
These are monitors, so I get a live feed of myself. That's just like higher quality.
Oh, fancy.
But also like protects my hearing.
Nice. Have fun.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.
Do we have any more battery? This one's dead. Yeah, I think we're done, man.
Ended on
Happy
prison.
with
Well, we'll come back.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would do is I'm gonna write some questions and kind of guide the experience a little bit more so that it's like, okay, we're gonna focus right now for the first.
I know what you're saying. Now you want to focus on
And then
actual examples.
And
Of
then when we get to a point in the story where we're getting stuck, I'll be like, all right, let's go into like the middle of the journey, and then because like the journey is like a process, right? Do you know about the hero's journey?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I figure we could talk about all of these things under the guise of that, and if you have like specific examples, I would maybe think about them ahead of time.
Gotcha.
But dude, I mean, I had a lot of fun. It was definitely good to
That was
chat.
fun.
I'm still rolling.
That
off.
last one was.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That last one, I didn't even. I kind of forgot we were podcasting.
Yeah, and I think that's hopefully where we're gonna get with all of this.
Yeah.
Is just like.
Like, I looked
and
over.
I could do this all without that, you know. Like.
Yeah. Well, I was saying, did you want to stop
I was
it?
originally thinking, I'll stop it. But yeah, I was originally just thinking just the audio, and like, yeah, it's kind of nice because we can be a little closer to the mic and just just chill, you know. I feel like the cameras always make me a little nervous.
That's true.
And always like, even if I'm not feeling nervous, my like the attitude that I bring is a little choppy. Like I'm like not saying just normal stuff. I'm like tightened, you know. My nervous system is a little stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know? I have a question. When we were going through this, did you have a podcast in mind that you were trying to replicate being the host of another?
No.
I wasn't not replicating as in like trying to be that person, but I was thinking about The Weeknd, which is with Theo Von. He's a comedian, and I really love his. I was watching one of his last night, so it's funny. And the whole time I was just thinking about the vibe of his thing, and I really like it. It's
Really?
two people.
I'll check
Yeah.
it out.
And it's like there's pauses, there's awkward pauses, there's like, you know what I mean? It's like they don't have to be on a roll. There's a lot of uhs. There's a lot of, you know. And I was like,
Unpolished.
super unpolished. And they were like, "Well, are you done? Like, is there anything else to say?" And then they kind of just usually will go on like a 2-minute tangent at the end of like, "Are they done or not?" And they're like, "Yeah." Do we have? And they leave stuff in. They're like, "How much battery do we have left on that camera over there?" You know.
That's funny. I
It's like
that.
super.
Behind-the-scenes-ish.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Theo Von.
VAUGH.
VON.
VON.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Theo Von. The Weeknd.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
Dude,
Cool.
and he has all kinds of people. He has like Jesse J. He has like Trump. He has like all kinds of people, and like he's a comedian, right? And he's known for being like an uncancelable comedian because he was born in a very white trash, like, community, and he was less than he was in a poor black community actually, and he was treated less than the black people by the black people. You know what I mean? Because they were like the only white family around. But he had like a crazy upbringing. Like he was like, and you know he has kind of like that more country education. You know, he still has the accent of like, yeah, mine, you know, and he's like, and so he's not very, what was the word I was trying to say earlier? He's not politically correct when he speaks, which a lot of older people love his podcast because they relate more to the lingo. Like if you're trying to say retarded, just say retarded. Like, you know what I mean? Even though people nowadays will be like, oh, that's like a really mean word. Like we don't say that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Whereas like now you have to say like mentally disabled, or you sometimes too much for people too. You know what I mean? Like you have to really sugarcoat your wording so it's a lot just plain, raw, and simple when he talks, and you know what I mean? And you can tell he doesn't mean wrong by it. You can just tell he's just not as educated. You know what I mean? But it comes out funny. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You should do it. You should check it out. It's cool.
Yeah. You want to talk some more? We could just roll audio if you want.
Oh, sure.
Pull it up, bring it in. You can't see it, but Adrian just scooted.
Is this still continuing from the podcast that we were doing?
Yeah, we haven't. It's been an hour and 5 minutes.
Whoa.
I know, and that was after the 30-minute first take, and after the mess ups.
Wait, we're on part 2 technically, right?
Part 2 technically.
So this is like the unseen audio only. ASMR.
The ASMR
Welcome
version
back.
of my podcast.
To Brando G's podcast. Yeah. I like it. So let's get more direct.
Yeah, and feel free to ask me questions.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's get more
direct.
direct.
Both of our journeys.
I know.
This is not just like
we've been talking about me a lot.
Ask you about your journey. Yeah, ask me a question. What's up?
Yeah. So what's your struggle with social media right now? What's going on?
Great question.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
That's why I've been summoned.
Okay. So by the time people will see this, I will have put out, hopefully, a post that talks about how I am struggling with posting on social media. I feel very much like I need to be polished.
Yeah.
I think this comes a lot from like my upbringing. Like my family always wants to come across prim and proper and put together. You know, like you trim the fat, you don't show the behind the scenes. You really show the polished product. And I come from people in the film industry who are doing commercial work, who are doing photography. So when it comes to stuff like that, I know a little bit about it. So putting out even just like a little photo of my workshop, it just feels unpolished if I didn't edit it, if I didn't take it on a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, and if I didn't edit it in Lightroom. Taking it on my phone feels like
improper.
Yeah. Bad.
Yeah.
I feel gross doing
just bad.
it. So, along with that, I also have not been an artist or considering myself an artist for very long. So, I want to tell a story. I want to have a big message that I want to get out to everyone. But I haven't been an artist long enough to tell a story. My favorite artists have been doing what they do for a long time. And you know their message is coming through their work because they've worked on it for years. So, in thinking all of that, I was getting frustrated because I want to be present on social media. I want to share my process, who I am as an artist, but I'm doing a lot of copying right now. I'm doing a lot of studies right now, and none of that feels true to me as a person, as an artist. Does that make sense? So I basically was deciding I want to focus on the journey being the story rather than this bigger message that I need to tell.
Yeah.
I can focus on being messy in a way that's sort of polished.
Yeah.
Because I'm bringing attention to it. So I can feel good in the idea of telling my journey and being unpolished, because I have to lie to myself a little bit to make sure that it's okay to put out unpolished work.
Yeah.
And this is a way to kind of explore my friends' journeys as well as my own, and combine those into maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah.
My story and what it's going to become, and also share a little bit of behind the scenes of what's going on, how I'm tackling becoming an artist.
Awesome. I have 2 questions and a statement.
Okay.
First question. Right now.
Yeah.
How, so part 1 and part 2 of the first question. How do you feel about your upbringing's perspective on presenting only the polished edition or polished result? 2, do you agree with it? That's the first part 1.
Yeah, I don't feel good about my upbringing forcing me to, not forcing me obviously, I'm not getting my
raising you.
There's no gun to my head to like produce polished content.
But raised you to.
The impact is on me has been significant in that I feel a lot of anxiety, and I don't post a lot of things that I think I want to post because of that. So I think it's a negative thing. But there's a positive side to it.
Correct.
Which is that I know how to produce good content, and I have the belief in myself that I could produce movie quality, cinema quality work. Yeah. So I have a big ego in just saying, oh yeah, I could do it like as good as Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that more often than the positive side, it's negative in that I don't post anything.
Gotcha.
I just think to myself, I should make a post, but I don't have time to make it high quality, so I'm just gonna not post.
Gotcha.
So it holds me back.
Okay. So that's what you think about it. Do you agree with it?
Do I agree with it? Which part? Do I agree with the fact that?
Do you agree with your upbringing's perspective on only releasing the published,
No, if you were here asking me right now, Brando, should I just put out this crappy photo that I took on my phone, or should I make sure that I use my DSLR and put up a light and use a voiceover? No, I'd say no. Just fuck it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Second.
And so I think what I'm telling myself right now is just do it.
Yeah, just do it.
Put it out.
The second question was, you said something about the DSLR, like only shooting with the DSLR, and I was like, my second question was, why not just shoot with your phone? Why not just shoot to shoot,
Yeah. I think it comes from knowing the tools. So I've used a DSLR and a mirrorless camera now for over 20 years. And knowing the quality differences and the ability to post-process makes a big difference. I mean, there's a reason why we have a professional camera and why we...
So you're already thinking with the plan to post-edit.
Yeah, and I think that's my problem is I overthink. I over plan.
Yeah.
I'm like, the potential is there to make this into 6 pieces of content if I do it as a podcast that's filmed. Whereas I could just record the audio and it could take 5 minutes to set up. But I want options. I just want options. So if I only take it on my phone, I don't have the option to over-edit it or overthink it.
It's true.
And if I just take it on my phone, then I just gotta be satisfied with the quality of that.
Yeah. And there's
I'm never satisfied, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Just never satisfied with anything.
Yeah.
Can you relate?
And there's something to be agreed with about 1.5 options.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
like,
I have them. I just sometimes I don't use them, and then I feel bad about myself.
Yeah.
This great DSLR that's just collecting dust.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel
But
that
it's
way.
like, imagine you tell yourself, okay, I want to do 2 or 3, a series of podcasts in which I film. I want to do an everybody's podcast. So anybody can set up their phone this way and shoot in this type of a room and, with a white corner, and just me and somebody else. And this is what you're going to get. Like, I want to create if the goal is to create a raw podcast, right? You tell yourself you want that, but in your head, it's that plush the polishment.
How many cameras did we have set up in this room?
5, right? Was it 5? 4 or 5?
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 or 5 cameras.
It's like, so it's just wild,
I'm
right?
intense.
Yeah,
get it.
it's like, even if you told yourself that you want to do a raw series of podcasts that people can specifically copy your method and look at how you filmed it with what you filmed it with, right? And they can do that in a day. They don't need to go buy anything that they don't already have. You know what I mean? A table, a wall corner, and your iPhone or whatever, or Android, whatever. And but in your head, you're already, like you said, you want options.
I'm 6 steps ahead, right?
So you tell yourself you want something raw, but you're giving in your head the end goal is already pre-polished. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or else it wouldn't be up to your standards.
Yeah. It's funny. I hadn't thought about it.
Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah, I do want this to be more raw.
Like if I asked you, oh, that's a cool idea. What's the, what does the raw podcast look like to you? You would probably give me something that it's not very raw at all.
No.
You know?
It's probably edited.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's part of my journey is like learning where to let go.
Yeah.
Because I have an overactive, creative, and intense,
Mm-hmm.
obsessive mind.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I can learn to let go through this journey of talking to people like you, or
Mm-hmm.
obviously like deconstructing some of these patterns that I have, is I can figure out how to focus my
Yeah.
time and energy on the right things. It's
Yeah.
like, does it make sense to spend 2 hours setting up for the podcast and getting all the equipment the highest quality that I can, or does it make sense to just go into it blind and enjoy the unfolding of what we're gonna learn from each other?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I was trying to prepare questions even for you when I know we can just sit here and have a great conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't even matter if it's good enough for the audience. It's good
Yeah.
enough for me to just learn a little bit more about you and who you are as a person. But I do tend to think about the audience because I'm an artist, and it's scary to
It's
not-
ingrained.
It's not, and I don't want that.
It's weird to unpolish your result. It's super weird. It's like if you asked a high school kid or a middle school kid who just sketches in their little doodle pad to make you have 30 seconds, make something cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
They would make you something with probably 3 colored pencils or something. You know what I mean? They would have very minimal stuff to make that piece with.
And they would use reckless abandon.
Yeah.
They would
For
just
you?
go.
They would just go.
Mm-hmm.
If you asked an expert sculptor, artist, and right, to make something in 30 seconds, they would have to have a minimum bucket list. They would need to have I don't even know anything about art. They would have a list of also physical materials. They were I need my 2x4 canvas with this, I need my blah blah blah. I need this specific brand of deco pens, or you know what I mean, to create the thing I have in mind. And it's it's too polished. You're trying to make it too perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
If I just asked you if we were in a cave and I just asked you to pick up a rock and draw on the wall, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that's raw.
Yeah.
My statement was, so I know right now you're trying to capture the journey, the focus of this project or series, whatever this ends up being, is the actual journey. Actually, bringing it back even further, you said, here are all these artists before me who have already had 20, 30 years in the being that artist, and they have a message, and all their art is about that message, right? And it's like, that's awesome. They found their message, they found their whatever, and they're doing their thing about it, right? And it's kind of interesting because the way I was hearing it from the way you're talking about it was making it sound like there's this message that you have to find, or there's this thing that you have to find as an artist to make art about, right? And I'm like, well, what do you have right now? You're like, well, right now I only have my journey, right? And I was like, well, there's your thing, right? So my statement was like, you're already doing it, but like, make your art about the journey, right? And go find people who are exactly where you are and just talk to them about what they're doing for their journey. You know what I mean? And your journey is just recording the many journeys out there. You know what I mean? And that's just going to help other people help navigate their journey. You know what I mean? And that, at the end, is the end result, right? Like, the end result is never the end result. The end result is simply the product of the journey. So the thing is actually the journey, not the end result. You know what I mean? So right now you're doing the end result by recording the journey, which is awesome.
Yeah, I have a problem with that end result part. It scares me to say something's done because then it can be judged, right?
Yeah.
But
it's never done.
I know, and it's never done, and that's the problem. Is I want to put out work. I want to say this is done. This is a part of who I am right now. It's a time capsule, and now I can move on to other work. But right now, I'm so caught up in finding something that I like, that I feel like it's never done. It's never finished. Because I'm constantly learning, I could always improve something that I'm doing that I did yesterday. Yeah. But calling it done is scary.
Correct. So that's exactly what I was saying. Is your thing, your project, is literally, I'm trying to be as literal as possible. Yeah. It's the journey, right? Yeah. It's the point. It's the experience from point A to point B. Point A being the beginning, point B being the result. Mm-hmm. That finishes, right? And that's the part that you're scared of, right? But if you focus on the experience of the journey, and you, the artist, focus on that, not just your journey, but other people. Go search out other people's journeys. And I mean, that's literally what podcasts are, isn't it? It's a place where one person, they have their life, right? But they allow the world to talk to a ton of people about their experiences and their journeys, and that benefits other people going through their journeys. So you are just your work is to create the ripple effect of many journeys, an eternal amount of journeys to come, right? Yeah. So it's your work, if you're scared of it being done, it's if you choose to focus on working on the journey, your work will literally never end.
I don't know whether to like that or hate that. Yeah. It's but also in a way, no matter what you put out, it's finished because it falls under the message of this is part of the process. I mean, for me, the process is the constant need to create, and starting things, not finishing them is part of my process. Not finishing them has been a part of my journey, and I want to figure out how to finish things. And I think that's part of my journey of learning. I was hoping that I would find something in self-study in these online classes that I'm taking of yeah, what does finished look like? Is it just when the timer ends in a life drawing class?
Yeah.
Because that's easy for me. You put on a 5-minute timer and you say draw this person, and when the timer ends, like I don't want to go back and edit it. I'm like, that's done, that's finished. And so like, why do I have that problem when I don't have a timer on, when I don't have a live model in front of me? I have art pieces that I've been working on for 3 to 10 years. There's pieces all over this room that we're in that are unfinished, and I feel like the only ones that are done are the ones that are in a frame or fired. Fired meaning put in a kiln. Yeah. And even the ones that are unpainted, who have already been through a kiln, feel unfinished. The ones that are brown up there. You see this?
So you're looking to start finishing things?
I'm looking to start finishing things because I want to be able to add that to my arsenal of things I can do.
Is finish things?
Yeah.
Mm.
But I'm also curious how other people are processing their journey, and the process, letting people into the process of what this looks like. Because I have been in the middle of the A to B, I feel like I have a lot of insights into that.
When you, let's say the goal of your personal journey, or part of a mini goal, whether it's the big goal or the mini goal of of Brando's personal journey, currently is to finish things, right? To start finishing things, right? When you think about the things that need to get finished, are they polished?
Are they polished before they're done?
No. If you were to finish them, are they polished?
Kind of, in a way. If I frame it or if I fire it, it should be polished.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, it's kind of like, because here we were like an hour and a half ago talking about just making a decision, right? And just say yes. It's the easiest thing you can do. Just try something, right? And in your case, it's just finish something. Like, just finish it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But you can't just finish it. You have to finish it polished.
It's hard.
And so,
I want to let go of that part.
Yeah.
And when I look at some of my favorite artists, Degas, we go to the National Gallery 15 minutes down the road. Degas' work is some of the best sculptures that have ever been produced in America. And his work is typically, I think he was American, I'm not 100% sure, but his work is typically unpolished. It's like mostly unfinished.
Yeah.
It's like you can see where he's dug out the clay, you can see where he's placed the clay, and it's more or less this. It's like an idea of what the piece could look like, rather than like a polished finished product.
Yeah.
But I love that in a way. So it's funny that I don't love my own work.
Well, it's cool and it's relatable. Like, for the record, I'm not necessarily an artist in the traditional art sense, but it's like, if I always think as like someone who's not huge in art or doesn't know a lot, if I went to an art exhibit for a date or a hangout with a friend who's really into art, like, I know I would just be looking at people's finished products, right? And if I came upon a sculpture that looked like it was almost done, but wasn't, I'm always going to remember that, because that part, like literally behind you, the thing I've been staring at the most in this room is that like miniature sculpture without the head. And it's like, throughout this podcast, if I've been stumped on something in my head, I look at it, because I'm like, this whole time I've been guessing, like, trying to guess, like, whose head is that? Like, what head would be there? Like, how would I make that head? And without you trying, you've already, I think part of the artist's job is to get their art to communicate to, they're initially expressing, right? But they're trying to get that message across, right? And that involves engagement with the people they're trying to express to, right? And part of doing an unfinished job like that is like, you are making me interact with it whether I want to or not, because I'm subconsciously interacting with it, you know? It's like seeing half a drawing or whatever. It's like, what does the other half look like? Because we're built to, or at least society right now, currently in 2024, I think a lot of us, when we see something or, you know, what am I trying to think of? Like, if you see anything, usually it's the end result of something, right? If you see a car, like, you see the entire car, right? But when we see a car concept that gets released in 2024 and it's not supposed to come out till 2030, right? We get excited, we get hyped up for it, and we're not even car people, but it makes its way around social media because it's a crazy concept. But most concepts of anything, they do something to the human brain. Like, whenever something is a concept of something, it makes us just, because it makes us become our own artist, you know? The recipient of the product, the person looking from the outside, right? The one that the artist is trying to express to or appeal to, it forces them to become the artist. Because it's like, how would I finish this? And it allows them to put their own, like, you know, subconsciously you're putting your own flair onto it. You're putting, you know, you're finishing the product, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff I've been listening to recently with artists that say if you tell the audience the entire story, you actually remove a significant part of their participation.
Oh yeah.
If it's just a hot girl, if it's a drawing or a painting of a hot girl,
yeah,
great. When they look at it, cool.
Yep.
She's hot.
Yep.
I get it.
The end.
I did it. The end.
Yeah.
And that's boring.
Yeah.
The end is actually very boring for us. That's
Yeah.
why we like cliffhangers.
Yeah.
So if you give the audience some sort of piece that doesn't make sense, like say she's holding a device that looks like it's from the future and she's maybe in retro clothing. Like, what? Well, I'm confused by that. And there's no answer within the picture frame.
Yeah.
Now I think beyond the frame. Where did that come from? Who is this? Why is she holding that? And that's interesting. More interesting than her being hot is this weird device in her hand that I can't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's where I think you're kind of jogging my mind a little bit. Is that like unfinished work actually has a quality to it.
Oh yeah.
That finished work doesn't.
Yeah. It adds this invisible ingredient.
And just calling it finished is kind of subjective.
Yeah.
Like my own brain is the only thing holding me back from it actually being done.
Yeah. Imagine if every human was born knowing what the end of life would be. Life would be so boring.
Now tell me this. I'm going to grab a sculpture. If I said this was done,
Yeah.
would you be mad?
Would I be mad?
As a consumer of art,
I don't know if mad's the right thing.
would you
But
be
even if I
confused?
knew this was finished, to me, again, I'm a human, right?
Right.
And so the human brain is designed
Wait,
to...
are you human?
Some would say.
Okay. A couple people will be on your side.
Like 3. Okay, right now by the way, I'm looking for the listeners.
Yeah, just
For the listeners, yeah. Brandon has presented me a sculpture of what most would consider a featureless human body. So it does have arms, legs, midsection, slight detail in the abdomens, but no face, no hair, nothing. Just a mannequin.
And we'll put up a picture of it.
Okay.
So they can see it.
So, you know, if you told me it was finished, no, I wouldn't be mad or confused. But before you told me anything, like, even if you told me it was finished before you even presented it, right? Which you could argue, right? Is like, my mind is already trying to finish it. Even though you said it's finished, to me it's not finished. To any other human it's not finished. Why? Because we all have eyes, nose, ears, genitalia, we have scars. We all have, scars, scratches, bumps, lumps, So we all have details that we receive through life, right? So it's like, no, this plain thing is not finished.
What did you notice first about this sculpture when I presented it?
What did I notice first?
Yeah.
The little amount of detail in the head region. So again, no face, no hair, no ears, but the maximum amount of detail was in the lower midsection. So like the abdomen. That's where all the detail was. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for doing a little bit of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a project that I started, and then the nature of clay is that it dries out. So if you're not constantly wetting it, it's hardening.
Yeah.
Constantly. And drying out and cracking. And as it cracked more and as it became drier and drier, I became less and less interested in the project. And so it sort of became finished because I stopped paying attention to it. I mean, it is what it is now. Like, I couldn't change it that much even if I wanted to. The nature of clay is even if you reactivate it with water before it's fired, it becomes what's called leather hard. And so it's at that stage right now where it would take days, if not weeks, of constant water for this to become back to a state of malleability where I could either add or subtract, unless I carve into it with a knife or something very chisel-like.
Yeah.
And at this point, it's very fragile.
I was gonna say, even then, it wouldn't be exactly what you want it to be. And it's funny because, again, circling back to what we were talking about, decisions has been a huge word of topic. Word of topic. I don't know if that's a real phrase, but it's a big word we've been talking about in this podcast.
Yeah.
And what you just said, you can only add even to modify would mean to add, subtract. And if you really wanted to change it and like recreate something how it is but better, right? You can't. Like with this being how it is, with anything being how it is, once something's done, like you're left with decisions, right? So just make another decision. Add, subtract, or build, Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. It's good advice.
Yeah, what's done is done,
Yeah.
But it's cool, right? Because it's like, whether this is what you wanted or not, you still made this. This came into existence because you made a decision.
Right.
Imagine if you never made a decision. This thing would not be here.
Yeah.
And all the other decisions that would come to your brain would never come to your brain because you didn't make that original decision.
Yeah, and I think the other problem that I have, if you even want to consider it a problem, maybe you can help me turn it around in my mind, is that I work in so many different mediums that it feels like they're very disconnected, even though they're from my mind and I have interest in all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I have abstract paintings, I have abstract drawing, like pencil drawings, I have sculptures like the one we just talked about, I have collage. So when I present my work to anyone, they're confused because of the vast majority of materials.
Mm-hmm.
And I even get confused sometimes looking at the differences of things that I'm interested in. Should I be trying to tell a story? Is one of my first questions for you. Like, should I be trying to find a tether between all of these? Or, and does it confuse you? Like, is it confusing that an artist would work in so many different materials? Because I feel like there's a natural desire for our society to see things as like polished and like people have a direction and like a niche. It's great when people find a niche because it's like that's what they do. That's what you're known for. That's how you gain popularity. Is you talk about X topic. Like Huberman Lab is a good example, right? Like the dude talks about science. And you know you're going to talk about science, whatever topic it is. He's going to break down.
Yeah.
So I feel like I don't have that. Is that a problem? Is it an opportunity?
The biggest thing that you've asked me is should. Which is wild. Like, it's like, why are you even asking me if you should do this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're asking me means that you made a decision. Should is the result of someone who made a decision and they're not sure if they made the right decision or the wrong decision. Like, should I keep doing this? Should I pursue this? It means, you know what I mean? It's like, should is transferring over you're transferring over the opinion of someone else. Like, you're transferring over, like, what you would do. You know, what you would do is, would comes from your own opinion, right?
Right.
But should comes from someone else.
Wow.
You know?
It's powerful.
Thanks, bro.
I asked that question.
Thanks, bro.
Because, yeah, I mean, that is a fear of mine. Is like, am I making the right call?
Yeah.
And it's like, right is not even the right word to use here.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm making a call and that's about it.
Yeah.
And art is one of the most subjective.
Do you think you asked me should because by the way, my answer to should is why, right? So, should I do this, right? Should I pursue this story? Should I tell this story?
Yeah.
Should I even tell a story, right? It's like, the only answer I would have is why. Why would you tell a story? Why would you want to tell this story? Why would you want to build this sculpture? Why would you want to tell this message, right? Why do you care what my answer is? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, real quick, I want to go back to you told me your upbringing brought a lot of like, brought this habit of everything needs to be polished, right? So it's like, I don't know, I feel like there's a connection between this should question you asked me, and the end result being polished, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, there's a connection there.
Yeah.
I think that you're starting to help me see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
It makes me uncomfortable. Just thinking about it.
Yeah.
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 For sure.
Whew.
Yeah. It was hot out here. Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah, I think we should turn the should into a would. Would you want? Would you want to tell this message? Would you want to tell that story? Would you want to tell a story? Or would you rather go grocery shopping? Would you rather go jump roping? You know what I mean? It's like, seriously though, right? It's like imagine you have this existential question. You're like, why are we designed this way? Oh my gosh, I have to tell the story of why we are designed this way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you start doubting yourself, should I tell the story of why we're designed this way, right?
Right.
And it's like, should you? Like, no one can tell you that. Like, you know? Or they can, but that's other people's opinions. And really, that's just a projection of if they would. right?
Like
If they would,
Yeah,
right?
because if you believed in it hard enough, if someone said no, you would just ignore them.
Yeah, or let's say you were really up to other people's opinions. Like you were really open to listening to what other people would do. Let's say there was a time in your, let's say you're at a time in your life where either you don't trust yourself or you just don't, for whatever reason, you're not listening to yourself. You're listening to others, right? Then what other people are gonna say, you're gonna do, right? So if this person who has this set of biases, this set of opinions, this set of reasoning, right, and beliefs, right, if they tell you no, you shouldn't tell the story of why we are designed that way, or why we're designed this way. Then you would probably be like, yeah, you're right, no, right? But they are telling you you should because they wouldn't. I love how it just transfers over to they wouldn't, right? Because again, wouldn't relates to what they truly would or wouldn't do, right? It's in relative to them. Yeah. So.
Being human is such a weird experience.
Dude, it's so weird.
I know in your other podcast you talk a lot about this. Sort of
yeah.
Human consciousness and stuff. Yeah, I think that's really good advice for me in particular.
Yeah. Do you want to keep going on that idea? Or do we need to, yeah? Well, give me a should question. At the end of the day, even if you ask me though, I mean, I'm here to answer it for right now, but like, again, you're only going to be getting my opinion, but you would just need to turn the should question into a would question. Would I want to tell this story?
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, would you do anything different?
Would I do anything different?
Yeah.
In relation to what?
In your life, in your journey.
Would I do anything different? I would. Yeah, I would. What would I do different?
What would you do different? And why?
What would I do different? What would I do different? I'd probably... There's a lot of like family distance. There's a lot of distance in my immediate and extended family in relations to me and them. So it's like, you know, I would probably... Again, this is obviously looking back, so I could have never... I can and could have never undone this, right?
Oh, yeah,
because,
of course.
You know, because I felt how I felt then, so I would always do it that way, right?
The person you are today is...
Yeah. But yeah, I would definitely try and, like, be closer with... And try and close the gap and be there a lot more for relatives and all that. You know what I mean? And I think that would supply me with a closer relationship to a lot of them, which would probably give me certain different perspectives on life and the way other people live theirs and all that stuff. You know what I mean? It would just bring me closer, and all that entails with being closer with a family member. I think this kind of drifts off into something, but it's connected. But it's like, for me personally, like the reason the distance is there is because of obviously, I mean, relationships either attract or separate from each other, right? Like me and this person, where we get along, so we stick together, right? Yeah. But other than the usual, like you know, being adopted and being really the only guy in the family. You know, I have my dad, but he's not necessarily... He doesn't go on, like, family trips and all that stuff. You know what I mean? He was never really around the family, right? So with that in mind, I was being the only boy in the extended family and all that stuff. So kind of... there's definitely, like, an impact that I had on people that I didn't know that I had. Like, I was a huge... I held more of a responsibility and pedestal to represent what how a proper male should treat females, how how an older brother or older cousin should treat, you know what I mean? Stuff like that.
Yeah, you were, would you say, a role model in a lot of ways?
I should have been. That's what I was saying.
Well, yeah, I mean, good or bad role model.
Yeah.
It's like people who, what they see around them is what they expect from the world.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, that one of the things that you would do different would be to be a better role
role model
to the family in your life.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I think you're a great
And
role model now.
I was gonna say,
I
and
don't
it
know.
never leaked over to relationships. It never really leaked over to other women. I was always, again, I was pretty much raised by women, so I had a lot of great etiquette because of them in relations to women. So I treated other women very, very well in my life. Anything from etiquette to relationships, right? So like daily etiquette, right? So that never got affected, and I think actually it was exponentially enhanced because of the distance from the ones closest. I released that etiquette and that politeness and role modelness in female friends, Mm.
It's interesting though, the way you talk about that. It reminds me, I have like an interesting relationship with my family, and I feel like that's made it difficult to treat people like family. I feel like I meet a lot of people who have these great relationships with friends and family, like whether it's their brother or their mom or their best friend, they have this really good dynamic behavior, and I feel like I didn't get that. So, like, now in my current years, I'm looking for that, and I'm trying to find it in friends of mine who have it and trying to emulate that.
Mm.
But because I didn't grow up around people that gave me that dynamic, vibrant relationship.
Can you give me an example of what dynamic versus not dynamic looks like?
Sure, yeah. So, a dynamic relationship would be like brothers who are close and
Who are like
push
best
each other
friends.
around, who call each other out on their shit, who also support them through anything thick and thin, who will be there for them. Those kinds of relationships, or like even a grandmother who's just like super supportive and doesn't have that mother-daughter relationship with somebody that they can like give kind of this different kind of advice to, or step in and be this sort of best friend role that a mom can't be maybe to a daughter or a son. I didn't have any of those types of relationships with a grandmother, grandfather, mom, dad, brother.
Same.
So when I see it now with like you and Derek, or like best friends of mine that are in relationships with their significant other, and they're just like super vibrant and dynamic, I'm trying to now emulate some of those, but because I don't naturally just have those dynamic relationships or even skills, it's hard for me to get close to people. I feel like I've always come across a little bit stoic and calm, and I want to have these sort of dynamic relationships, but I don't know how to find them, because it's like my natural instinct is to be reserved, because that's how my family is. Even though like, it's not how I feel, it's just what I'm attuned to. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm a big believer in like, if you feel like currently you can't do something, or currently you don't know how to do something, and you just have no clue of where to go or how to get started to get better at being that or doing something, literally just be next to the thing that you want to get better at. Literally. So like, I was really bad at math, right? Really bad at history in school. So I always sat next to the nerd. Like, I always sat next to the history nerd. Seriously. And I I still am so bad at history, but but at least like when there was a test coming up, I could sit next to them and I could like, they knew everything and I could just review. I could like bang out all of this, this information, and
Was
just.
that challenging at times? Like,
Oh yeah, big time.
because you didn't like them or just didn't vibe with them or like.
Well, obviously, yeah, you gotta kind of. Obviously, they have to be a bearable person. Like, I'm not gonna sit next to somebody who just because they know, you have to have some sort of a relationship with them. You know what I mean? Or at least be in a place where a group setting where you can just be in their presence. And
Would you stretch yourself just because you knew that being next to them would rub off on you in a positive way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you have to put a little effort too, right? Like, if somebody's a little bit of a dick or a know-it-all, but they actually do know it all in the thing that you know nothing about, it's like you kind of, you put up with it a little bit. You know what I mean? Obviously, respect goes a long way, and like mutual respect, right? And so there's boundaries. Like, you gotta have boundaries for yourself and make sure you're not being abused or you're not being demeaned in any at any quantity, but as long as all of that is good, you just put up with it a little bit. You know what I mean?
That makes me think, like, I have a question. Who did you learn boundaries from?
Boundaries.
Yeah.
Where did I learn boundaries from?
Yeah, well, it sounds like you have a pretty good.
You know what?
idea.
I think I learned boundaries from myself, from being distanced from people for so long.
Really?
Yeah.
Give me an example. Tell me what that was
Like being distanced from my family for, just not having a tight relationship with my aunt, my cousins, my, mom, dad, all of that, right? It's like, close being like every day, having dinners with each other every night, you know what I mean? Like,
Not having that.
yeah, not having that.
What kind of boundaries came up?
Well, you learn to just have to set boundaries for yourself first. So, like, when someone's getting too close, whether those boundaries are technically logical and healthy, or maybe they're a little bit too much. Maybe you set a boundary that's specifically far around you so that when somebody crosses, they're still not super close, But boundaries, who taught me boundaries? With other people, probably.
I feel like another way to think about boundaries is like self-respect. It's just like,
Yeah.
where
Yeah, literally.
do you find...
What are you comfortable with? And, like...
Yeah, it sounds like your
being-
dad has a lot of boundaries.
Just being around
He just,
people.
like, doesn't want to be around. And that's like, he doesn't get forced to come on the trips.
Yeah.
He
I wouldn't talk too much about him because I don't know what he wants me to say about him. But
That's fair.
But he had a really, really troubled upbringing. Really hard life that he made. He made a really, really great life for himself because of it. But his are not as much boundaries. His are, because he actually he wants to be. Out of the whole family, he actually wants to be. He's the person who wants to be the closest. Like, yeah, but he has some emotional, he had a lot of traumas when he was younger, and that resulted in him needing, like, his survival mode to come out, and the survival mode, in a big part of it entailed cutting off emotions completely, literally, to reserve his sanity, to reserve his logical thinking, to think clearly, like, okay, this happened to me, I need to do this next to survive. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So emotions had to get cut out. And, he married my mom, and, you know what I mean? And they had an awesome life together and stuff, right? But 50 years later, right, of marriage and stuff, of them being together, or I said they're 70s now, so even like 60 years, right, of not tapping into his emotions. Now he wants to, and he can't. He literally cannot. Like, he's like, You know what I mean? And I remember you and we talked a little bit about off camera about like an on and off switch. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And you know, not talking about that too much, but it's definitely an on and off switch for him. Except he can't find the switch. You know what I mean? Like he has to find the switch first. You know, so right now he's like, yeah, going on his own journey to do that. So the reason I brought all that up is because I think for him it's not necessarily boundaries. I think he's just blocked out. You know. Yeah. But I have an older cousin, the younger sister of her. I'm really close with, or like we were really close. Now we've kind of like parted ways a little bit, but we're still like relatively close. But she was like my best friend, you know, and we grew up together. And her older sister though has always been very quiet, reserved, definitely full of boundaries. Like she had her own personal, respectful boundaries. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I guess just observing her. I guess that's where I would have gotten it from. If anything, I don't even know.
Yeah, because I feel like in my experience, like almost nobody had boundaries. It was like everyone just pretty much like let anyone do whatever they wanted, and then they would talk shit behind their backs, and that was crazy. Like being in a family where like I shouldn't talk about it too much, but like say I did something wrong as a kid. You know what I mean? You're a kid, you do stuff wrong all the time that like people don't like or is not respectful. It wasn't like you would just get yelled at.
Yeah.
That would be like, oh, I learned their boundary. It would be like a side conversation with my parents about like what they were feeling, and then like,
and how they
or
didn't
even just the silent treatment, just like nothing, like literally no emotion, fully cut off.
Yeah.
And like then you're just confused as a kid. You're just like, what's happening around?
Yeah.
What's going on? And then you're just like, okay, well, that sucks. Why is everyone mad? You know what I mean? Like everyone, the dynamic in the house changes.
Yeah.
Like how people are reacting to each other changes. It's not all hunky dory and like happy friendly. So yeah, nobody really expressed their boundaries. Even if they had them, they just ignored them. And then it would become this catty, passive aggressive sort of dynamic where like people are trying to not step on each other's toes, but you're always guessing because nobody's explicitly stated a boundary. Like no running in the house. Or, you know, I feel this when you do that, right? Like if my parents and grandparents had that ability, I think that I would have learned boundaries a lot sooner. But I learned to have it the wrong way, which is ignore your own self-respect and just grit your teeth. And it's a different kind of superpower. It's like, yeah, I could get through the most boring, horrible conversation of my life and let somebody talk over me 100 times. And like, that's a power in itself that I have the ability to do. It doesn't make me feel good, but it's definitely a different skill set than like being good at knowing my boundaries and expressing them, which I think helps you get close to people.
Yeah.
Because when you don't, and you're just getting annoyed by stuff and not telling anybody about it, you create this invisible divide. It's like people think that they're close to me, but they're not. And it's only in my head that we're not close. And they don't know why. It's like this, like, a lot of people call me a black void. Because there's like this super gap between getting to know me and wanting to know me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange. But like people like you make
I think I do that.
It doesn't happen as often too. Because like I said, we talked off camera about just ask me anything. I'm an open book, but I'm also a black hole. So it's like I won't explicitly tell you my stuff.
Yeah. But, off camera I was talking about how when I was saying, because I just said like, oh yeah, I think I do that. Like I think I am that also. Like not the non-communicator. But like specifically with like family and friends, like, you know, whether it's like minuscule stuff, like friends of 10 years who didn't know I was adopted, because I just like literally never said it, right? Yeah. You know, because there was no reason for that.
Humble thing too, right?
I guess.
Did you lump that in? Because like
It could be seen as that, but
look, I played soccer for like 10 years,
Mhm.
and I can like do that thing that you like rainbow kick over your head.
oh really?
Yeah, and
Cool.
I did it the other day, like out of nowhere with Simba, and he
Mhm.
was like, "Bro, you can play soccer?" I was like, "Why didn't you tell me?" He plays soccer all the time, and I was like, "Dude, I don't know, I don't care, I don't think about it. I don't just like go around
Yeah.
telling people like,
I can
hey,
rainbow
I'm really good
kick.
at soccer. I'm
Yeah.
really good at soccer. We should, you know what I mean?" He plays soccer, and like, he's like, "I'm in a league," and I wasn't like, "Can I join you?" I wasn't like, "Dude, I'm really good at soccer." I just kind of am like, all right, you know, if he sees
I've
that-
always wondered how does that. I've always.
how do you do it?
How do
naturally?
people? Yeah, I've always, bro. I've always wondered that. You know, like people always, because that's the response we get. The response is like, "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you?
Right.
Like, why wasn't this information given to me before?" And it's like,
Yeah.
when was the appropriate time to have told you that without sounding like,
A total dick.
like, yeah, or like, because if I feel like if really, because when I hear that, I hear, okay, so you would rather me tell you everything about my life all the time, right? Which might be an extreme way of saying it, but it's like, right? It's
Right.
like I didn't feel a need to tell you I was adopted for the last 10 years. It just never came up, right? But imagine if it was like, oh, by the way, I'm adopted. By the way, I really don't like hot dogs. By the way, I really...
And those people are just oversharers. And it's like, I don't want to be around those people either.
Yeah.
So I don't
I just feel like we are the natural way. I feel like when it comes up, you'll talk about it because you're open.
Or do you think his response was maybe like it's sort of like a colloquial thing?
Do
you know what I mean?
that
Like,
means?
I don't think I know what
What's
it means.
colloquial?
I think what it means
Colloquial.
is that he's saying that, but he doesn't actually mean it. Like, bro,
Oh,
you
like
should've told me
rhetorical?
that.
No.
Kind of.
No,
It's kind of
it's,
like, I'm just saying it because that's cool.
uh,
And I'm glad that I now know it. But like him saying you should have told me earlier, or why didn't you tell me that earlier, is just sort of like a conversational piece.
oh, he doesn't
Not
actually mean,
actually, like-
why didn't you tell me?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like a cool thing to be like, oh, why didn't you tell me that earlier?
Uh,
Like I can
yeah,
say
yeah,
that to
yeah,
anyone
yeah.
from now on.
That's probably what they mean.
That is probably what they
But there are some people who actually mean it. Like they're just like
well,
no.
now I'm all forever
why
been
didn't
trying to
you-
figure it out. Like,
No,
is
I
this
think
person
you can
actually
tell by the
doing it?
tone.
By the tone.
Yeah, if they're
Well,
like,
Simba's like one of the most humble and honest people I know, and I think he would just.
I think if somebody just says, "Oh, why didn't you tell me?" Like that's normal, right? That's colloquial. But
I think we're learning.
Yeah.
I'll look that word up.
but if somebody's like, "Bro, what? Like why didn't you tell me this?" Like I go play, like I go play this every weekend with my homies. Like you should just join us.
That's a bit intense.
Yeah, even if they don't mean it like in a mean way, but it's just like that means that it's real. Like why didn't you tell me? Like you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I like that.
Colloquial.
Colloquial.
Yep.
It's a weird word.
Oh yeah,
I'm getting
dude.
so hungry.
You
I'm
are?
starving. I didn't eat lunch. So breakfast, and then we've been talking for over 3 hours,
Really?
or at least close. Pretty
Yeah.
close.
Probably.
Yeah.
Cool.
Any final thoughts?
Oh, we're wrapping it up?
I'm starving, dude. We could
Really?
fucking grab some food and come back in the room. So you
Dude,
want?
I could talk all day today. That's wild.
Yeah, it is wild.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun. I mean, there's so much stuff to talk about with you.
Forgot we're on this podcast. I've just been
You
like,
just gotta come back. You'll be like a returning guest.
cool.
Continuously.
Yeah, I'll be like an unofficial co-host.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I like come up sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Damn, because we have so much that we didn't talk
Yeah,
about.
take a picture of that board. So that
Yeah, that's a
we
good
come
thing to do.
back to it.
What food are we getting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I shouldn't eat out because I'm broke.
Yeah.
But
I feel that.
I might have something. Oh, I have some leftovers in the fridge. Or, man, I would splurge on a pizza. But
I have frozen pizza at home.
do you?
Yeah.
Dang.
Do you want to go make it?
Yeah, I could maybe bring my leftovers to your place.
Actually, it's funny. I told my parents I'd be gone for like an hour.